Hello everybody and welcome to Amphlett Reviews. Today we're doing disc 2 of the Shawscope Vol.1 box set. This time we're talking about the box set from Shantung or Shantung, whatever correct pronunciation is, please comment down below. I'm terrible at pronunciations. Directed by Shantung, the legendary director from the many films from kind of the Shaw Brothers library, including the one on Swordsman. Rest in peace, Jimmy Wong Yu, who's recently passed away. Really tragic, really sad. Fantastic age, but yeah, really sad news in the world of kind of, you know, Shaw Brothers and all that kind of stuff. But today we're going to celebrate some Shaw Brothers and celebrate in his honor kind of thing for these fantastic movies. And this one's very interesting. I've done the first video, King Boxer, which I absolutely loved. I thought was absolutely fantastic. That was kind of the golden package, I would say. The kind of King Boxer is kind of got a little bit of everything. It's got a little bit of kind of comedy. It's got a really classic kind of, you know, hero kind of rise story, betrayals, love interest. It's got some fantastic sequences in that. It's got a really good, nice package. I think this one is a very interesting kind of companion piece with that first kind of movie on this edition. And the way it's been ordered, I think, is very deliberate. Both films are quite similar. This one was also released in 1972, same year as The King Boxer. And it's very different compared to that first film. And I'm obviously not comparing them too much, but I'm saying in terms of story, in terms of just, you know, characterization and kind of, you know, direction where the story's going, it's quite an opposite film compared to what the first movie offered in a sense. So I can't help but make that comparison initially. This film is basically a character that is going from the rags, the poor kind of thing. He's going to this kind of low local town, and he wants to make a name for himself. He's basically fed up. He's got no money. He's with his friend, and he's kind of a little bit cocky. He's a little bit stubborn. He doesn't want to take money from any of the gangsters. He wants to be a gangster. He aspires to be someone kind of very famous and popular and have his own kind of, you know, his own clan, his own gangs. He's got a lot of pride. He's got a lot of, you know, angst about him. He doesn't want a handout. He doesn't want to kind of falsely earn something from someone else. He wanted to make his own name in this kind of town. And you see the kind of the evolution on this 2 hour and 15-minute movie. Quite a long movie for a Shaw Brothers film, surprisingly. And you go from his very early scenes where he's kind of like, you know, got, you know, rags in his clothes, everyone's treating him like crap, people kind of throwing coins at him and making him do tricks. He's got some skill set. His fists are like iron, and he's got the kind of backing for it a little bit. And what I find interesting about this film, and I don't know if anyone else felt this way as well, and I think it's maybe deliberate the point of it as well, because I don't think it does make a few comments on it, but not kind of subtly. It's kind of like just carefully done. It's almost like a little bit of an anti-hero kind of villain story a little bit. The character is not necessarily a kind of good guy in a weird way. He's very much villainous in some of his actions, in some of his kind of questionable motives. The fact he breaks arms, he breaks legs. Some of his, you know, his quotes, his lines are very kind of like villainous kind of lines. It's a very interesting approach, and I don't think I've seen many Hong Kong early 70s movies, at least from my recollection anyway, that a character is becoming a gangster but going a little bit on the dark side. Values and principles, he definitely wants to kind of earn what he has and be respected and go after the people that are in power a little bit, but he doesn't really want to take over necessarily. He just kind of wants a slice of his own. He wants a slice for his own. He wants his own empire, wants his own little kingdom, wants his own little kind of gang based. But he kind of does recognise in the film, despite his arrogance, despite his kind of his angst to kind of prove himself time and time again kind of thing, he does recognise, you know, people are going to get, you know, hurt and involved in that sense. You know, he's constantly telling his friend, who becomes a weird little coachman, which is really strange in the film. You know, not something I would have thought, even though he's got his back and even though he's been, you know, with him, for instance, the start of this little journey, gone from like a village kind of thing, travelling from place to place. You know, he kind of, he's looking out for him a little bit. He's not talking down to him. Obviously, his position is a little bit questionable, I would say, but he definitely is saying like, I'm a gangster. I'm willing to do things that honest people wouldn't do. You're an honest man. I don't want you caught in the crossfire because it's going to lean badly. And I think the kind of the point of the film is by the end stretch of the third act, because I was starting to get a little bit like, what's this film trying to say? What's this film trying to go about? You know, because the character is very much, you know, you're not sure if you're not sure if you're meant to like him or not. You're not sure if you're meant to be on his side. You know, definitely he's better than the other villain characters, you know, and classic kind of Shaw Brothers kind of storyline kind of plot. You've got two other kind of main kind of gangs in town. You've got this kind of hatchet gang. I think they're called the Four Champions, I think they are. And they've, you know, they're very, the central kind of focused forefront of this film. There's a lot of scenes with our three main villains. You know, they've got the main boss, and a lot of their schemes, a lot of their characters are in the front of the film, and they're seen throughout the entire thing. And each one's got their own kind of little subplot, and they interact with a main character throughout the film. The second villain's character is kind of like this kind of wealthy, rich man. He's not really in the film that much, surprisingly. He's very sparingly in the film, but he does play a big part into the second, leading into the third act, and reinforces some ideas, I think, about, you know, our main character, because he slowly almost imitates a little bit of the main kind of character you saw in the start of the film. Because at the start of the film, you know, he taunted him, his skill set, he throws him like $1, and, you know, he's got a carriage, he's got like a business suit, his pipe, doesn't well, he leaves his cigarettes in, and he literally does become him in terms of his mannerisms, in terms of his kind of showing his wealth and showing his power a little bit. He's definitely a character that's very full of himself. He's definitely someone who thinks he's better. He thinks he can take anyone on, and it's kind of it's appealing. It's kind of like that classic kind of anti-hero kind of approach. It's definitely got the kind of qualities of a hero character, but done in a bit more of a dark. Even though it's got the kind of the traditional kind of setups of a Shaw Brothers film, it never really goes about it in a traditional way. There's longer sequences in the film that I kind of both good and bad in the same way. I do think some scenes do linger on a little bit too long. It allows for some emotion to play out. It allows for some scenes to kind of really sink in a little bit harder. And it kind of allows this kind of little mini kind of town to kind of feel like an actual living breathing. It's kind of like a Scarface in terms of its storyline, kind of in terms of its story, but even character in the film that says rise and fall all the time in this town. And even like the sort of, not love interest, almost like a fantasy the character main has about her in a weird way. He kind of wants to be with her, but he never really acts on it, he never really does anything about it. She's very sparingly in the film also, very surprising also in the film, but she's someone who initially likes him at the start because she, you know, he's sticking up for, you know, the little man. Obviously he becomes a gangster towards as the film goes along, and she doesn't respect him, and this kind of vicious circle of kind of like, you know, there's always going to be someone new taking the protection money, there's always someone new going to be taking over, seizing power over location and turf, and she kind of like disgusted by him a little bit, and, you know, he feels like, oh, I can have anyone I want, I don't care, but he's kind of infatuated with her, but he never acts on it, he never really does anything, and that kind of plot line is just very much open in the end. I like that. It's quite different. There's some very interesting decision making in the film that's both for the characterization of the villains and the main character that I think is quite fascinating, and it's quite different from Shanghai, and it proves again how good of a legendary director is, because his cinematography is on point, the way he stylized action, the way he kind of lets shots linger a little bit. In this film especially, I think it's very interesting. It's got a different kind of approach to it compared to a lot of the movies I've seen, and again, it's very opposite compared to the King Boxer, which very much is a character that is rising to the challenge and going through the trials and the falls and the rise of a kind of hero character. This one is very much a rise of a gangster, very much like Scarface, and the kind of the downfall of being someone like that. And at least the character recognizes that. At least the character acknowledges those kind of potential, like, if I die, then everyone goes back to being poor. I mean, this turf has gone up for sale in the sense that someone takes over. You know, power is only temporary. You're only as strong as your main boss, your main leader in the sense. It definitely kind of reminds me of kind of like, you know, Killer Constable in the sense, you know, that's a character that had very much a pride in his kind of work. He wasn't kind of aggressive or angry. He was very much full service, I'm going to do my job, and the character slowly realises that he's been played for a fool and acts upon it towards the kind of the second and third act of the film. And even it's got a little bit of that kind of Fist of Fury or New Fist of Fury kind of thing, in the sense of it's rising up a kind of character and then the downfall of these characters towards the kind of third act. And I really like how it's all played out. I love the sequences. The action sequences are top notch. I do think some scenes do go on for a little bit longer than they should do. I think the fighting competition sequence with the Russian bodyguard is a little bit too long. I think there's some scenes that do go on a tad bit too long in terms of padding, and yet we have more scenes of one and not enough of something else. I'm curious to see a bit more about that. I need to watch some of the extras and to kind of, you know, dive into why some things were done a certain way. Surprisingly as well, the film never goes over the top, you know, compared to what King Boxer, in the sense, just have to make an initial comparison, that had Japanese villains, that had a samurai. This one definitely goes a little bit more of a grounded approach. It definitely goes a bit more kind of straight line, but I like that. It's quite nice. It's refreshing. The characters a little bit more defined. Their actions are more questionable. It doesn't get fully resolved, but I like that also because it makes it interesting to watch. And this all leads to a complete bonkers third act. Probably one of the best kind of third acts insane fight sequences I think I've ever seen, alongside kind of Jackie Chan and Jet Li and all these greats. What an incredible, fantastic finale. Just a massive setup, a massive clusterfuck in the epic proportion. This character knows he's going to get screwed over. He kind of knows a little bit beforehand, and he goes in there anyway, and he kicks some serious ass. But he's not invincible. He gets stabbed, he gets injured, he gets thrown about the place, and he is weakened and he is tired, and the sweat coming off his kind of his body and his face is just insane. The blood everywhere on him, and he's taking on these bad guys one at a time, and he's doing everything he can. It's a really long sequence, but I think it really highlights and really pays off what the film is trying to say and what the film's trying to go about with its kind of message about really crime doesn't really pay. Being a gangster is fun for the time being, but it's not going to last forever. There's always going to be someone with more men, more power that's going to take you on. But my God, if you're going to go out with a goddamn bang. And this one definitely felt like that for sure. An incredible third act that really is rememberable, that really is quite shocking, the way it's kind of delivered. You know, the reactions, I love the way he kills some of these guys is insane in terms of weaponry, in terms of just bare fist. He's got this guy get his iron knuckles. A really memorable third act that has a really nice, sweet ending, because usually the end credits scene is very kind of quick and easy, it's gone kind of thing. But again, the music choices, it goes quiet towards the end. It definitely allows for the sound effects and the Foley work to really kind of boom and pop a lot more on the TV. And the fact that we end on a kind of a nice, a bit more of a hopeful note that, you know, he helped his friend. You know, I like that kind of nod. I think that was nice. I think that really added the cherry on top. He kind of knew beforehand, he knew what I was getting into. He had the foresight to kind of like, you know, in case I fail, I want you to take, you know, I want you to take the money and go and find a life. You're an honest man. Honest men need to live an honest life. And I like that a lot. It's definitely reinforces those kind of Scarface kind of ideas kind of thing. And it's very different for sure compared to a lot of other Shaw Brothers movies I've seen up to this point. Very fascinating, very interesting. I like more challenging movies like this. Good, interesting characterization, not a clear-cut, cookie-cutter kind of character. Definitely some questionable morals with his kind of actions. Interesting subordinates of, like, you know, villain characters that aren't over the top or silly, but feel actually like actual humans. One's running a casino, one's doing this kind of drug trade, one's setting up a master plan for this other bad guy that he's trying to kill. It's interesting, distinctive characters that have very distinct looks, distinct attitudes, and it all comes crashing down towards the third act. Doesn't go the obvious route of the love interest, doesn't go the over-the-top nature compared to some of these other films that do. It feels very grounded, very personal. It feels like another kind of tale in the book of, you know, this town. You know, people come and go over time. There's always going to be rise and fall of these villain characters, these gangsters. Overall, the Boxer from Shantung is a very interesting kind of flip opposite from the King Boxer, and a nice companion piece that works really well back to back on the box set itself. Almost like an anti-hero kind of villainous type story in the way of Scarface, in a sense. A character that wants his kind of, you know, his own rich and fame and glory, that wants to become a gangster, that wants to kind of be his own kind of man, wants his own reputation compared to these other kind of established gangs in this kind of small little town. He makes choices with his friends and his kind of, you know, his companion pieces. He definitely is willing to go full on force against the bad guys, despite his own kind of safety, despite the odds against him, in a sense. He's got skill set, he's willing to put him to test, and he wants, you know, what he's owed to him, in a sense, but he's willing also to know his limitations. He knows he can never get the love interest, he knows he can never get certain aspects. He recognizes his friend is an honest man and chooses to kind of part ways with him. I like the choices he makes, despite knowing, you know, the outcome of the, you know, these kind of actions, you know, losing his friend, losing his love interest, but willing to take on the bad guys, willing to kind of risk it all for this kind of, you know, glorious nature of being this kind of legendary figure. And it's a very interesting piece. It's definitely not the traditional kind of safe, easy, cookie cutter kind of, you know, Shaw Brothers type movie that you would expect to see. It doesn't have crazy kind of, you know, villains. It has very much a grounded kind of approach in terms of its story. Shots go on longer maybe they should do. You know, it's not a perfect film. It's got a few issues here and there kind of thing in terms of pacing, in terms of padding. It's a very long film with a 2 hour and about 15-minute running time, but that third act is absolutely fantastic, incredible. It goes on for so long and you feel the the adrenaline, you feel the sweat, you feel the intensity, and the choices made in terms of editing, in terms of the fight style, in terms of the sound and Foley work, and that last shot is really haunting for sure. A really interesting kind of choices made in this film that definitely goes against many other kind of movies in this kind of genre, and many movies even for modern day standards. A fantastic entry in the Shawscope Vol.1 box set. I'm really loving this journey so far. Let the good times keep coming.